All right, we about to go live in right now.
Hey, we about to do one of those challenges.
Garrison, you look kind of green, bro.
I'm about to do one of those challenges.
Man, come on.
Garrison, you look kind of green, bro.
Hey, listen, I'm not laughing at that. That's not me.
Oh,
That's on y'all. I'm not laughing at that.
yo,
Not going record.
yo, we're okay. I think we are live. Let me just double check.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
see the
I see it on
lives.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
great timing on the live.
Okay, we good. We got 2 viewers. I think one of those might be me. So cool. Let's wait for some people to get on. Wait for some people to get on. You know, that's how they do it.
That's how they do. They say, we just gonna wait for you. Come on in. As
on.
Hey,
if,
just a couple more seconds. I feel
come on in. As if we could hear you
Welcome.
when we're not
Come
already
on.
in.
Come on.
Welcome.
Come on.
I can hear the door opening and my congregation is slowly sweeping in.
Come on in. Come on in.
Whack, dude. So whack. I think
yeah.
that's what is the toughest for a lot of these pastors going online. Is like you didn't have a lot of people at your church, and then now you don't have a lot of people online.
Dang, you coming
Bro,
for
is
them, man.
that where we're starting? We're
You're
live,
coming
bro.
for them, bro.
We're live.
Hey.
That's where we're gonna start. That's what we're doing.
Yo. All I'm saying, it
Oh,
looks
my
worse
goodness.
live than in person. That's all I'm gonna say.
All right. I mean, that's how you feel.
Still waiting for people to join us before we get started.
Now we actually got to get them out now, so we should probably kick it up. But yo, welcome to, what are we calling this? We bored Adventists around the horn.
Yeah.
Basically.
Quarantine.
Yeah.
Quarantines.
Adventist quarantine, man.
Exactly. This is basically, we're in a group chat. Not everybody from the chats on here. It's weird. I just had a random flashback to when we went to that comedy show, G and Jordan. They kept talking about how they were in a group chat, and I just kept thinking about how that's probably the lamest group chat in DC. Because none of those dudes were funny. Some of the dudes in the show were funny, but the hosts were buns.
Awful.
Oh, buns. They made all the comedians look amazing.
Oh, they sure did.
So I think they did a good job then.
Yeah.
I think what's rough
maybe that was a tick. Yeah.
I think that was a tick. It's funny because when I went to the Comedy Cellar in New York City, I think last year, it's hilarious.
Pre-corona.
I remember pre-corona. Just to be clear, I was at a free joke night, and then someone was hosting that night, and then I remember seeing Roy Wood Jr. in the corner writing jokes down. And this dude was so vexed that the host just kept piling his jokes on and on and on. And the host did a set for maybe like 5-10 minutes, and all the comedians in the room just threw their hands up and immediately sat down, saying they were going to be getting up for a little while longer. So it just reminded me of that, how hosts can just really take over a show. It's hysterical to me.
Thank you for that, Jordan.
You're welcome.
We appreciate that aside, Jordan.
Yo,
So you're getting a feel for how the chat goes, Garrison we're gonna try and get through this without anybody leaving, because that happens in the chat a lot. And so, we're gonna mandatory no dipping. We gonna
no leaving.
I'm talking to myself in the chat most of the time, like asking questions and all the answers.
Bro, I want to
Not
make
raw.
sure Logan always gets love. I'm gonna heart everything you say, bro, from now on.
From this point forward.
Oh man. So yeah, we bored, but I mean, we're gonna go through a couple different topics. This is not planned at all. Literally, we all came on here. This dude Garrison's like moving currently.
Literally,
So,
that's why
He's building that bed right now.
I'm literally in my bed frame, trying to take this joint off. Like, please help.
Simone's like, "Are you done with your little friends so we can be done with this?"
Right. You got them IKEA tools. Those joints are not built to be taken apart, bro.
Literally not. Like,
ever.
One-time use.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe we could just start with, I mean, this is kind of what everybody's been doing, but we'll start with the obvious. We got COVID-19 going on. It's been extremely disruptive. I'm only out of the house because I told Tasi I'm going to buy groceries, and so I'm on here until she figures out that I'm not at the store.
Facebook.
She really don't be on Facebook. That's the thing. So I'm probably gonna get for a while.
My wife neither.
We can get into that. But what would you guys say? Well, I guess we'll frame it this way. What's the thing? We're obviously in the social distancing, physical distancing space right now. That's kind of our new normal. It's probably going to be that way for a bit. What is probably, let's say, one thing that you miss and one thing that you don't miss about the space we're in right now? You could do both, either or, whatever. We'll leave it open.
Okay, I mean, I'll go first to relieve any kind of awkwardness that may come up with no one talking.
We appreciate that.
Of course. Dude, so definitely the one thing I do not miss is going to work in person. I don't miss it at all because I don't have a commute now. I get up, I take a shower, eat breakfast, and then I'm at work, and then that's it. So I'm saving at least 80. So I mean, it's total for there and back home is going to be 80 minutes. So it's about 40 minutes there, 40 minutes back. And that's definitely different from Andrew's, where I could just walk to work if I really wanted to.
Facts.
And then one thing I do miss, though, is I do miss just going outside and not feeling like I could be arrested in a couple of weeks.
How strict is it over there in DMV?
So I mean, I got an article a couple of days ago, which pretty much said that law enforcement are going to be around checking people, but pretty casually to see if they're really out, if they need to be. And if you're pulled over for whatever reason, then they're going to pull you over for that reason and also ask you where you're supposed to be out of the house in the first place.
So basically everybody's black now.
Pretty much.
Got it. Makes sense. How you feel about that, Logan?
Excited.
Finally, I can finally say it.
No, that wasn't the rules, I thought.
Yeah, we do have the rules for sure.
No, it's kind of similar, Jordan. Like they just kind of locked down the state of Virginia and everything, and it's like, I mean, it really. But the thing is, like, when you read all the exceptions, so I read the article and it was like, you can't go outside except for exercise, school, work, going to the grocery store, going to the doctor's. Like, what are the things do people do outside? Like, that's literally everything that people would go outside for. So, like, I guess we're locked down, but it's not so much.
They killed extracurricular, though, like sports, movies, malls. Like, they kind of squashed all that.
Like, basketball
stop having fun.
Park. Like, that's a dub now, I'm assuming.
Yeah, like, there's a basketball court not too far from where I live, and they actually and a tennis court, and they chained the doors and put up barricades so you can't get in. I mean, you can, if you want to go in, you can go in, but it's, like, clearly against the rules.
Man, can I tell you guys, when I had to travel back to Walla Walla, I first got to Buffalo. It's like 45 minutes from where we are. I walk inside. I think I was one of like 6 people in the entire airport.
Oh, wow.
It was like
that's crazy
apocalypse style. And then I went to Chicago. It was very similar. And then I had to fly out to they took us to San Francisco and then Pasco. But
traveling right now, that's interesting.
I know. Had to come back, bro. Listen, I had the mask on and everything.
Walla.
I was not taking any chances at all.
Yeah, they canceled my flight tomorrow for back to California, so I have to try to
there's just no one flying.
Yeah,
bro, it's crazy.
They probably can't even afford to have the flight go out just because there's so many people who probably canceled or just not even getting on flights.
Yeah,
even if they wanted to.
My flight got rescheduled like 4 or 5 times. Like, I just kept seeing my phone buzz over and over.
That's wild.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, you know, maybe what I'll add to it is, I don't know, man. Being in the house has been awful. I'll just be real. I mean, there's been good.
No.
There've been. Don't get me wrong. There've been good parts of it. I love Noah Nixon. I love Tatiana Nixon. I think that the reason they're probably happy I'm out the house actually because I'm just
plugs.
probably hanging around just looking miserable. But I think the question kind of is, I mean, and maybe this is for people who are out there. I'm trying to look at. There's a lot of people in the Facebook comments, but since we're on Zoom, we can't really see them, so we're not ignoring you. But hello to all of you. But yeah, it's sort of this idea of like, you know, so like having to be like hyper social when you're in the house in some ways while being physically separated from social networks. You know what I mean? It's kind of like this weird dichotomy. And so like, I think my answer to the question is like, you know, I don't miss, like similar to what Jordan's saying, I don't miss like some of the in-person obligations, whether it's work or, you know, having to show up for meetings or having to dress up at all. I like putting on sweats every day. It's been fun. But then the things that maybe make it more difficult is that now you're having to increase your social interactions, you know, in your house, which there's just being honest, there's pluses and minuses to that, you know. You know, you're not used to that amount of engagement, you know, with the people that you live with probably, but now it's like all you got is rooms to choose. You don't got no other option. You know what I mean? So this is what it is.
No, facts. It's crazy, like the fact that like your workspace, your home space, your like everything's the same, and it's a lot. It's a lot, honestly. Like I was just telling my friend though, it's so crazy that like we're all kind of relegated to our homes, but I don't think anyone's really experiencing FOMO. Like I know like the events are canceled, but I'm not really experiencing that like, oh man, I wish I was like I actually don't want to be around you because I don't want the thing, right? But I would love to kind of have more interaction at the same time. It's weird as a pastor, like the fact that, you know, like I'm used to like getting, you know, every single week we get together with our congregation and like we're enjoying worship and stuff. And now we're not doing that obviously. But the interesting thing is like, I think now that everyone's home, they kind of like have more time on their hands and they're like, so pastor, and like they're like they reach out like 5 times more, which is cool. I don't care, I don't mind.
Tell the truth, it's not cool. Leave him alone.
Garrison, blink twice if you need us to help you, bro.
Leave him alone.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I have to say, like, it's just. Oh, go ahead, Adrian. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, being very introverted, I actually feel like I miss people more than I normally would. Like, if you were to ask Jordan or Logan, when they were my roommates, immediately after work or class, like, I'm going straight to my room. And it's
like knocking on the door. Hey, do you want some dinner?
Getting a death stare when they open my door. Like, but I feel like I miss people. When I came back here, there's like no one here. You know, we sent our students back home, and it's like a ghost town. You know, and that's what probably made it like the weirdest thing. And I that was an experience I actually never thought that I'd be like, man, I didn't think I would actually miss that, because under normal circumstances, I'm just kind of like, yeah, after work, I'll see y'all later. Like, leave me alone. But it's been the very opposite. And yeah, man, I don't really know how to make of that.
It's been weird for me because I'm in Missouri. Like I was flying out here to see my nieces for spring break 3 Mondays ago. Okay, yeah, maybe 3. Yeah, 3 Mondays ago. And when I was in the airport, they put this like sheltering in place thing in on California. And I came to Missouri. My parents live in the middle of absolute nowhere. I mean, the closest neighbor is a half a mile away. Like it's a distance. And so it doesn't really feel a lot different here because I'm like staying home. That's the only thing. But my dad's retired now, so I'm like just staying at home with him. And like we'll go out. We went out finally after like 4 days, but it was just like, oh, not many. It was just mainly me and my dad riding around. And he was making jokes about, I wonder if they're really essential, you know. And I'm like, all right, Dad, you know, cool. It's like I guess we're essential. That's why we're out, you know, these kinds of things. But like, yeah, definitely 100%. But wanting to go back to California now, I'm like, I wonder what, like I think I want to go back because it seems like that's where I live and like that'd be. But then I'm like, wait, what if I gave? It's like actually terrible. I'm actually kind of fearful of getting back to the that's busy but not going to be busy at all. So, but I don't know. It's weird. It's weird, but it's not weird, Missouri, because they don't take it serious. They don't care. They don't.
Yeah, I was about to say the middle America vibes is different. So
nah, different.
Just pray to run that way.
When I don't see people taking it seriously, like in my mind, I just see an extra week being added to the COVID-19 calendar.
Yes.
And it's just like, bro, I got like, there's stuff has to happen. I mean, okay, listen, I'm very sad that, and it's awful what's happening, especially the families and people that are most vulnerable. And it's like, bro, it really goes to show you that people can just be real animals, especially people our age, when they're calling this thing the boober remover. I laughed when I first heard that, and then I got really sad because it's funny, but in an incredibly dark way.
That's so dark.
That's very dark.
Super dark. What?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
That's so
awful,
dark.
Dude. Awful.
That's terrible. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Man, Twitter is such a fascinating experience because I feel like it's just not real life at all. I see tweets of people like in shock that the White House suggested this go on until April 30th. But I'm like, have I been like living in a different world? Nobody takes this as seriously as they should. Like, why are y'all surprised? Like, I don't understand that, yo. Like, I don't know, man. People are funny on Twitter, bro.
Yeah, I was listening to this podcast, Ezra Klein podcast, and he made this comment that's like really kind of stuck with me. He was saying that in order for social distancing to work, it requires a high level of social solidarity, because like while I might not get sick or you might not get sick or it might not be as bad if I do or whatever it is, like that individualistic kind of like lens or perspective on it is good for you, but is terrible for society at large. So we have to have like a lot more social solidarity, but the reality is that like we don't. We actually kind of shy away from social solidarity. It's like dog eat dog world, capitalism. What I got is what I got, and what you got is what you got, and I got to get mine, that kind of thing. So it's kind of like the problems with like rampant individualism are all kind of like heaped on top of like our terrible like health infrastructure and like our problematic government response, and like all that stuff is all coming together at once.
Right,
bro. Facts. In some ways, it's almost like how doomed is our country, because individualism is just rooted in American culture, American society. And then when the idea or a tweet comes up of like a nationwide lockdown, you will see tweets or comments about the idea of the government having too much control over our lives and precious freedom. So it's like we're like in a lose-lose situation, because I don't trust the convictions of individual people to care about someone that they've never met, and like I never know what to make of that.
Yeah.
But see, then like the other tension, right, is like as Adventists, it's like whoa, the government's kind of getting they're getting too powerful for me right now. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't know what to do. Do I really want them to come in with guns like, yo, get back in your house? Because then it's like, oh my gosh, like no, I don't want
blue
that.
law, man.
I don't want the blue law. The blue law.
It's a question of trust. Can you trust the government to put a ban on travel during a time that's a pandemic and not a time that's going to just like ruin us, to save us as opposed to destroy us. Like that's
right.
And
right.
I don't know the answer to that
Does
question.
this set a precedent in any way?
Yeah, it's one that we'll have to be interested in looking back on and see. But I've seen some takes by people that are like, yeah, this shows that the government can, if they want to, go a little further than they maybe need to. And it shows that we did it pretty willingly. Like some people pushed back, but all in all, we kind of just fell in line and we're like, yeah, this is bad. Let's do this for the greater good. But the trust is important, I guess.
And yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from, and I feel like a big motivator is just the context of it, and I think it's also hilarious to see again, like what we were saying before. I feel like the world could be on fire, and there are still people that are going to chalk it up to something that is maybe linked to some sort of conspiracy or just not take it seriously enough. So I'm super interested to see, like, I wonder how much it'll take for that group of people that don't take things seriously to take it seriously for once.
Oh my God.
It's been super interesting to see for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys hear about
the awakening.
Yeah, like y'all, there was a pastor here in Virginia, non-Adventist pastor, who was like kind of making fun of the coronavirus, saying that like people were in mass hysteria and that he died of it. Like he died of COVID-19.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
It's
I
like,
didn't see
that took a turn. Oh my God.
He nor we saw that coming.
Yeah.
That's the worst kind of irony.
It's terrible. It's like not even to be funny. It's just like that. Like people won't take it seriously until it's too late. Like you're
exactly.
now.
I mean, low key, it's the judgment of God, bro. That's what that is.
Oh. Is that right? Oh, word? That's what that is?
I mean, it hit different. It hit different when that's what he was talking that talk when he was saying Corona wasn't real, but it hit different when couldn't have a funeral.
But let me ask you this.
You're bugging.
Let me ask you this though.
I'm just saying.
Is it the judgment of God for the government to lock that pastor up in Florida who was talking that talk on stage at his church? He was like, they can't tell us.
He was talking spicy.
They locked that man up. He's in jail.
That's
I read that he was in one of the top counties in the United States for coronavirus positives, and they were taking it really serious, and he had I don't know, it was a very large congregation.
It was. I saw some videos. Yeah,
he was talking crazy in those videos.
Yeah, it was a lot of people, bro.
It also shows that the pastors have a lot of influence that they should utilize for the good. I mean, I think whether you're big or small, you should be able to say like, hey, maybe we don't like this, maybe we don't agree with this, we want to be able to meet together again, but we want to save lives. You would think as Christian pastors, saving lives, kind of what they put on their signs, would be important.
Should be part of the MO, yeah. That's good stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, because I've had to have this conversation with some of my family members and my home church back in Rochester. How can we draw the line, or what is the responsible rhetoric that we can use when like prophecy is kind of introduced?
What is that in the background?
I think the first thing, Jordan, you got to turn the TV on. I'm sorry to tell you that.
What's going on, Jordan?
I know we're in the middle of the fight.
No, I'm not streaming right now. Okay, first of all, that has to be made completely certain. I had a family emergency I had to attend to. I am sorry. Please continue.
Just hit that mute button, my guy.
Yo. No, Adrian, you're asking a good question, man. Like you're saying, like, how do we respond? Like, what were you saying?
Yeah, well, I feel like the sometimes it can be very natural to go down the like prophetic lens of, well, God warned us that this would kind of happen, and then kind of run with it to the point where our response or our rhetoric we give to our church members and to our family is just so fully engrossed in prophecy, But then again, like, I don't want to ignore that there may be some prophetic significance to this event without sounding like I'm crazy. So like, what is the proper way we could mention the significance of what we're experiencing without it, us coming across as fanatics in any way?
No, I mean, I'll take a stab at it. I mean, I think it's hard, right? It's going to be hard because I think society at large looks at, I mean, if you look at history, people are saying, this is it, this is the thing, like within Christianity for so long. And then to be a part of a denomination where we really are like a prophetic movement, that's like a part of our identity. So we are constantly looking like, oh, Signs of the Time. We literally have a publication called Signs of the Time. That's our thing. So like, I understand that within society at large, and even within the church, there are going to be so many people who have been kind of false alarmed so many times that it's just going to be off-putting. But I think, the balance, is Matthew 24. I mean, that's been kind of within the conversation a lot. It's like Matthew 24 says that there will be earthquakes and wars and rumors of wars and pestilence. And like, that is a part, like, that's something to look for. And then Jesus concludes by saying, but the end is not yet, right? Like, so he kind of keeps he keeps this thing in tension where it's like, these are actually signs of the beginning of trouble. So look out for this, but know that this isn't the end. This isn't the end time thing. And he concludes that little pericope by saying, like, the end comes when, lawlessness abounds and the love of many wax cold, like when people's hearts kind of grow cold. And I think just having people aware that, like, hey, listen, like, this has prophetic significance, but this isn't the thing. This isn't it. Like, I think that's a good balanced way to say, like, yo, just look at scripture, like, turn to God, whatever, however you want to kind of conclude that. I think it's healthy.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, there's a lot of prophecy in that when you start to talk about also, this is going to guarantee, we may not know what this sign means as far as that, but it's going to guarantee people need food, people need clothes, people need resources. And so, like, church's response to, Christ's words is going to say, like, hey, we don't know maybe what this pandemic meant, but we do know that Christ said if we want to know him, we will feed, we will clothe, we will shelter, we will help. And, I think that's going to be, like, the big church's response to say, where are we at after, when these people are in dire needs because of unemployment, because of just like struggles at home, food, money, resources, otherwise. But
yeah, I think that's good. I think what I would just add is that, I think that as Adventists, we need to just get a lot more comfortable embracing the unknown. I think that we often, as Garrison, really put it, we've often teetered closer towards those movements that are always trying to pinpoint, like, exactness around everything, whether it's, when this will happen or when that will happen. And then now, of course, the big thing is, when is Christ going to return? When I think that Christ was consistent in saying that, no man will know the time of my coming, no person, will know. And so I think that sometimes we get confused. One of my favorite quotes is that, faith is not the absence of doubt, it's the absence of certainty. And I think in Adventism, we have equated certainty and faith in saying, I know all these things to be a certain way, and because I believe this, then things are going to happen in the way that I believe them to. And everything is sort of built around those certain things that we have assumed about God and what he's going to do and what's going to happen to us as a result of that, when and try as hard as we can to intellectualize ourselves out of any area of uncertainty or doubt or unknown. And I think that we just need to sort of reorient our members to embracing the fact that, yes, these things are all reminders that we should be doing certain things, but these are all things that we should have already been doing. Like, for example, just going back to this COVID-19 thing, one of the interesting things about, they talk about like the 5 things that you should do to help prevent the virus. And I'd say with the exception of the intense version of physical distancing that we're doing now, all of the other things that were being suggested were things that are suggested during flu season every year.
Right.
None of that stuff changed. It wasn't like there was some new magical thing that we needed to do in order to prevent ourselves from contracting or spreading. I think what's worse about this virus uniquely is the asymptomatic nature of it. And because of that, we need to physically distance. And so now that we're at the point we're at now, because our government bungled the early part of this, we're going to have to probably do this for much longer. But, not to get super churchy, but a spiritual application I thought through was the fact that oftentimes in our walk with God, so this gets back to, us as Adventists, that's our context. Oftentimes when things change in our life and around us, we want God to change, or we expect God to do things differently. And God's response always in those situations is, I am that I am. I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so the things that, you're being reminded that you should be doing now are all things that were a part of the journey you've been on with me before now. You just probably weren't paying attention to them because now it's hitting home a little different, And so, I don't necessarily think that we should expect this new, different thing from God because of the fact that things are happening crazy around us, because, that has happened and will continue to happen. And so we don't need to necessarily overemphasize this moment being any different than other moments, in my opinion.
I will also just try to sprinkle in a little bit from what you guys said, especially growing up and just kind of seeing how we dealt with, revelations and even the beasts and just the imagery of everything and taking all of that in. It's just interesting how I feel like we progressively gamified prophecy in seeing, who can figure out when it's going to happen and trying to piece together as much as we can to really communicate that the end is really coming. And I feel like sometimes that can really blind us from the fact that seeing prophecy happen blinds us from the actual suffering that this calamity is causing to people. Because a lot of times we're more focused on just trying to, understand and just put this into the puzzle piece of when Christ is coming back. We forget that these things are happening to people, and we kind of, in a way, shrug it off. We're like, well, it's supposed to be bad anyway, so what's the big deal? But that can create this kind of insensitivity towards people that are suffering, and the fact that we're still called to serve them, and we're still called to serve in a world that is progressively getting worse. I think that's the great irony of it, is that we're supposed to be serving more and more as the world gets worse and worse over time.
And I really liked what Logan was saying, where some of the things that we should have been doing, like helping people, providing food, shelter, go down the list, right? I think sometimes the danger that I've seen with prophecy is there is a sense of exclusive urgency for what we should do next, right? Where the urgency of a pandemic or a traumatic experience happens, and it's almost as if our first inclination is to get our church members right. All right, y'all, remember, we've been praying about this. It's time to start talking about prophecy again because Christ is coming. And when traumatic experiences are happening, like Jordan saying, socially to people that may not be as immediately connected to our church or to Christianity in general, in the sense of being, church leader or a consistent church member. It's well, I mean, God said the world is going to decline in sin. And it's just, I think I would like to see some of that urgency just kind of spread out outside of just those church walls. And that, kind of what Jordan's saying, that's part of my concern also.
Yeah. If you're going to do justice, I mean, that's going to be the reality.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
It really kind of feels, I mean, if I were to take what you just said, Adrian, and kind of like zoom it out, it feels as though that is kind of that is almost endemic in that we need to have like that urgency and that care for other people. We need a consistent ethic of urgency when it comes to meeting people's needs. And of course, that fits within the framework of the church. But I also think it fits within the larger society. Like the fact that we're willing to pass a $2 trillion stimulus package, but we're unwilling to make healthcare available to all people just because we think, oh, it's a problem right now with COVID-19, coronavirus, it's urgent. But the reality is that like millions of people die from diseases that if they had treatment for and they had access to healthcare for, they wouldn't die. I mean, I'm thinking about heart diseases and cancers and other things that like if people had access to a healthcare system that actually like cared for them and wasn't so expensive and they could actually have access to it, they'd be much better. And so I see like, oh, we can make COVID-19 testing and we can make treatment for people who have COVID-19 free because we feel like it's like an imminent threat to like our lives today.
Right now.
There's so many people who are experiencing imminent threat when it comes to our healthcare system. So that's our little point there.
Facts. That's good. Sure. I want to pivot us a little bit. Before I do that, though, I want to read a couple of these comments. Well, one in particular is very funny. Shout out to Gabe Morales. He said, "Congrats to Jordan's beard finally connecting to his mustache." I had to read that one.
Oh
man,
Gabe, gratata. Okay.
And then it's a lot of other good comments on COVID as well. My boy Matthew Schallenberger dropped a couple nice nuggets in there too. We appreciate you, bro.
Sure.
And so, but just want to pivot real quick. So, this will probably be like the last directly COVID related topic because I want to get us to some other maybe a little bit more lighthearted or interesting. We'll just use the word interesting topics. We're not going to be on here too much longer either.
I'm gonna throw a timer on this one.
Yeah, do that. So Garrison, you mentioned like the fact that events coming up, being canceled and things of that nature. And I don't know if this is too soon or too close to home, but I did want to throw it to Adrian for a second because as some of y'all probably saw, him and Esther announced they're going to be postponing their wedding. They were planning to get married this summer. And, I'd love for you to maybe just break down for us just your feelings, your thought process around that. I mean, I think we all collectively agree it was probably a difficult but wise decision.
Oh, man.
I think that's what's been happening on a number of fronts right now. But just talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, bro. So there are a number of factors here, and I wouldn't want to get into every single one of them. But the main one is as the severity of the pandemic just kind of became more apparent, we had to look at a number of things here. We were looking at 250, 275 people who were expecting to come to the wedding. And just virtually, you cannot have that many people in one room. So that was the one side of caution that we were really thinking about. The second thing is this virus is a bit more real for me personally, but probably more so for Esther. Jordan's mom, I don't want to speak for him, but she's had some respiratory challenges that do not make it easier for her to catch that virus. Esther has asthma. Her mom has lupus. So we were like, I don't know, like, is this, are we being socially responsible here? Are the optics of this, if we were to be like, bro, bump this, let's kind of continue. So we just kind of had to like, let's just pull the plug here. With the hope that her and I can do something a lot more private with the celebration later on, hopefully when things are kind of calmed down. But it's tough, man. It is tough, It's bittersweet to know that, all right, we'll still be able to celebrate with our friends at some point. But we were looking forward to that I now pronounce you husband and wife moment to be shared collectively.
Oh, yeah, man.
Sure,
and that I
for
think
sure.
that was probably the hardest thing. After we kind of pulled the plug and we posted it, there was like some like unexpected grief. Like, dang,
Yeah.
this is you know, and that was the grief I had never experienced because this is all new in terms of our engagement and our wedding. So yeah, that was a little tough. But just pray for us. You know, we're still planning. We're still moving forward things. So yeah.
Yeah. This man Adrian actually had more groomsmen than the recommended size of the group. So
that's facts, bro.
like
oh
easy.
man. Well, nah, we appreciate you sharing, bro. You know, I saw the post and I just kind of already. Well, first of all, I already knew that, like, man, I don't even know what that feels like, but I'm sure that it's just like not super fun. So obviously, you know, homie, we love you. We love you guys, and you know, you're gonna have your moment, but it's tough. I mean, on a way, I don't want to say way less, but definitely less, in my opinion. You know, critical moment in your life note. Having to talk to a lot of like our seniors who are graduating this year and having graduation postponed, and you know, I know you all have experienced graduations and know what that moment feels like. For some of them, you know, being first persons in their families to, attain whatever that degree it is, that kind of thing. And of course, we're gonna make sure that they're able to have that moment, but it just not being what they were building up to over that, you know, 4-year journey or their grad school journey. It's just really tough. And so all you can really do in those moments is try to lean into, you know, that empathy and just let people know that, you know, we're here in solidarity with you as you work through how tough that is. And so, yeah, anything else anybody else wants to add on that? But we're just kind of in a space where there are a lot of those kinds of, you know, it's like the conclusion is always, this sucks, it's super tough, but it's probably the right thing to do.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see because, you know, obviously we've known COVID-19 has been making its rounds. I think at least I heard about it hitting China in December, November-ish, around late December, early November, around that time. And of course, most of us have known that this thing has been around for a while. So it's not a surprise that this is happening. But when you see plans get canceled, when you see things having to be pushed back, it still feels like it's a surprise. Like none of us expected 2020 to go this way. It still feels like something that you've been looking forward to, like a wedding or a graduation or whatever. Feels like it was snatched away. So I definitely have empathy and I feel for everyone that was affected in that way because it's awful. There's nothing like just having a dream kind of taken away unexpectedly like that. So I definitely understand where people are coming from on that. Very sorry to hear.
Man, 2020 is in competition for the worst year ever, bro. Oh my God.
2020 and 2016 is duking it out right now.
Yo.
Depending on how this thing ends, and that'll foreshadow another topic.
I
we'll
know.
see.
It was a great year.
Oh man. All right, cool. So I'm gonna pivot us a little bit. Hard left turn or right turn, depending on how you feel. Well, let's talk a little politics, man. What do we? So what do we think the political implications of this are going to be? I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna out myself politically. This is on Facebook Live. We have
boo. Let's do one of those things where you're like, whoa, now I tell you.
Oh man. No, I mean, I'll put it out there. I voted for Bernie in our primary. It was, you know.
Whoa! I'm just
my heart goes out to him. You know what I mean?
Oh wow.
It was a good run. Oh, we doing that? Okay.
So thinking about a Biden
well, I had a funny question. Who's more likely to get COVID, Biden or Trump?
Ah, come on.
This dude is bugging, man.
We're not gonna do that for real.
Not gonna answer that one.
No, but
Yo,
being
it's
honest,
Trump.
so think
the Lord provides.
Oh my.
or it doesn't provide.
Amen. Let's keep both options open. We should just sign some release forms.
No, facts. But thinking about a general election in this new normal. I mean, if you think about it, we're going through most of the summer we're doing most of the summer without having regular primary, type action going on or whatever. I saw Pelosi on yesterday. She was talking about maybe doing voting from home, that kind of a thing. Which I have zero confidence in that coming together in a way that's
viable,
meaningful or viable.
The Twitter poll,
yeah. So it's just like, so just in general, what do we think? I mean, I guess there's so much uncertainty right now, but I mean, what do we think? What will it look like? Is there going to be enough of a time or amount of time for there to actually be like your regular, like general election, debate style type stuff or whatever the case may be, if things are somewhat back to normal in like around August or whatever?
I think we definitely have the capacity to speed up the whole process so we can have, I will say, a quote unquote normal election come November. I think, I don't know if it was Garrison or Logan, but somebody put the idea of what if they just move into the next term with Trump still in office. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm saying that because I hope it doesn't happen, but
he could win.
It's true. I think if this is over by August, we can definitely, I would hope the country has a capacity to just try to pick up where we left off essentially, and then just shave off some things that we were supposed to do but just couldn't do because of the virus.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel. Oh, go ahead, Adrian.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, my one concern is fatigue. Like to experience something like this, and we can expect some political polarization because of who is currently, sitting in that seat there. There's a side of me that I'm a little concerned of people like, I'm tired, like, will people go out and vote after what they just kind of experienced a few months ago? That's probably my one slight concern.
Yeah, that's a fair concern. I think I find it hard to imagine a scenario where millions and millions of people feel comfortable in places, especially in those districts that are heavily gerrymandered, districts where, like, especially in Black communities, where people end up standing in line, Black and brown communities where people stand in line for hours and hours to vote. I mean, I can see I can kind of like decipher a doomsday scenario where we see depressed voting in those kinds of districts, which would be catastrophic. That would be terrible, right? But I mean, the reality is, like, if our government really wants a free and fair election, which is up for debate, up for debate, we have 6 months to really build out a more robust, vote from home kind of system, an absentee ballot system. Just mail people their ballots, and we can work through that. I think it's doable. I think it's the sensible option. I mean, obviously, we hope that by the time we get to November, people can freely move about, but the reality is that that's right on the cusp of another flu season, and like, you never know how this might reemerge in the fall. So it's a really tricky balance. So get ahead of that and mail people their ballots, and just know that we probably won't get accurate election results on that night, but we probably get them over the next 4, 5, 6 days, right? And like that, and that's totally doable. And I feel like an acceptable way of going about it that kind of mitigates some of the issues. My real concern is the one that Adrian has, which is how do you move from this COVID-19? Like we talk politics all the time in our group chat, right? Like we love politics, but the reality is like we haven't talked about politics in weeks because of this.
Yeah.
Like it has come to a screeching halt. And these are this is a group of people who are high information, highly engaged. Every new headline, we have some kind of opinion or thought on it, right? Yeah. And the average American probably isn't as engaged, isn't interested in being as engaged. And so how do you move from this being the predominant thing that we're focused on, COVID-19, coronavirus, to now I'm supposed to listen to Joe Biden and Donald Trump debate? Like I'm supposed to listen to that
in an empty arena.
In an empty arena, like that's what I'm supposed to focus on.
Do it on Twitter,
like, it's terrible.
Well, I mean, I'll say this: whoever goes up against Trump, they better do a really well job of showing that how Trump responded to this virus, to this pandemic, is a clear example of him not being a good leader. I think that would probably be the best way they can use the situation against him, because he's done some very questionable things, and
to say the least.
To say the least, right?
Let me check my bank account though, see if that 1,200 dropped.
I feel like they're gonna have to create a good marriage between, okay, let's talk politics, but let's also still have COVID-19 in the conversation. A way to have those two intersect is saying, this virus is still here, and Trump did a bad job about it. Vote for me.
Yeah, that's fair. It's interesting though that.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say what Garrison was talking about on the voting, because like I'm not even a registered voter in California, where I have kind of been living a little bit, but haven't been very permanent. And I got a primary like ballot in the mail because I work in retail there. So they're like, we know you're here, please vote in our state. I mean, the whole mail-in thing would be really, really easy. But the thing is that a lot of states do not want everyone voting because they know that if everyone votes, it goes a certain direction. And now, Jordan's right, but go ahead.
No, I was going to say the interesting thing is the states that likely do not want everyone voting are typically, I mean, just from my assessment, my personal assessment, are typically red states, right?
Red states.
And those states would need more than any other state. Like California is notoriously good at absentee voting, right? They do mail-in voting by the millions, right? Like that's a well-known thing.
40% vote before,
Like, and that's crazy. A place like Georgia or Alabama, perhaps is not as they don't have a system as robust. I know Georgia doesn't care. As a Atlanta native, they don't care if everyone votes, right? Like they want for some of, especially Black and brown people, to not vote, right? Right. And in those places, they would actually, need for their absentee vote by mail system to be more robust in order to do well for, a favorite candidate like a Republican candidate like Trump. So it's kind of an interesting thing, right? Like it's kind of crazy. Go ahead, Adrian. Sorry.
Do you think this COVID-19 could change percentages of like the amount of how certain age demographics would vote?
Personally, no, I don't.
I was gonna say nothing ever seems to for some reason.
I mean, sorry, Logan, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, we have supposedly the most well-liked candidate for young people ever, the last two primaries, and young people have voted well for that person, but not well in general. They still only made up that 15%. So I don't know why it would really change. It could, but I don't see why. Yeah, maybe. But go ahead, Jordan. Sorry.
No, you're good. I mean, I definitely hear you. I feel like I'm just more on the hopeful side because I hope it changes. I hope this has rocked people enough to be like, yo, our healthcare infrastructure is really bad. we handled this terribly as a country. We need some significant change. I will say, if this doesn't really engage people to vote, I don't know what will, and I'll probably just move to Canada at that point.
I mean, you're basically not a big change.
Gonna move back home? Like, what do you mean?
Rochester, Ontario? Like, come on.
Come on, man.
But like, if Rochester had a good healthcare system, then that joke would slide, but it just doesn't. Doesn't.
Oh, man.
Oh, man. I don't think it's going to change much. I mean, like, you look at a state like Florida, which they had their primary, if memory serves. I know it was like 5 years ago when they had their primary, but like when they had their primary a couple of weeks back, I think it was after all of the COVID-19 stuff started to like pop off, right? And so it seemed as though we should see a much lower, elderly turnout and a much higher younger vote.
Right.
And yeah, no, it didn't work out that way.
They said
at all.
Illinois had more people, right? During the COVID. They were the first
that's crazy.
Tuesday.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Wow.
It's wild.
I think we're just going down the list of natural disasters or just terrible things happening and seeing, okay, by each disaster, how will young people respond? And it's just no for every single thing on the list, dude. Right. It's like, what is it going to take? That's the question,
Yeah, they're on TikTok.
They're on TikTok, right?
If you could vote on TikTok, it'd be a wrap.
Oh, it would be a wrap. Bernie forever.
I mean, man, it's crazy.
Yeah, Bernie, never mind.
And we've almost gotten through the whole thing. Let's chill.
No smoke for Bernie. We have no smoke. No smoke for Bernie.
Yo, so we probably have about like a little bit over 10 more minutes
Bernie
left.
needs a TikTok.
Yeah, I don't know if that will help.
It won't work.
Elizabeth Warren did it after she announced she was out. I don't know why she didn't do it the week before.
Bernie
does?
has a TikTok.
Yeah, but I think it's ran by like younger fans and supporters. But like, it's definitely certified for sure. It's probably a Shotty.
Shout out to Shotty.
Shout out
to Shotty.
Influencer of the year.
That's a fact. Yo, so I want to end with a topic that we'll maybe talk about the next time we do this, which is probably going to be like a month from now. I just want to say it was so hard to schedule this with these fools, bro. I'm not even going to fret. Logan, you were available. It's cool. It's all right. You looking crazy.
I'm so sorry.
Nothing to do. Quarantine.
Nah, but so let's switch back to a church-related topic. Talking about race in the church. So I'll start. I'm exhausted. I'm done with it. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm just finished with it, bro. Y'all got really serious.
I mean,
I can't laugh.
What's crazy is like your job is like race in the church, so it's kind of like whoa. He just announced. Was this an announcement?
Harrison's like, that's who I brought in.
It's over.
No. So I'm being kind of.
Calls. Dix, are you okay?
No, I
call you on live.
Oh man, I kind of do that for effect, but whatever. No, I'm obviously being somewhat facetious, but
yeah.
I think what I mean by that, I'll tease it out a bit more, is that I don't know, man, and I think maybe it's just what we're realizing again is that as much as we have our own sort of dynamic and network within Adventism, we're an American institution, and so we have inherited and continue to have the same issues with this conversation and topic that our broader country does. And we continue to run into the same kind of friction, tension, hesitation, whether that's on Twitter or Twitter.
My Facebook
and not to talk about anything specifically, but I just think, and the reason why this came to my mind is I actually was watching a Haystack report. Shout out to the Haystack. I think they're called Unfiltered Faith now or something. And they did reporting when we were. Now, I wasn't even trying to be shady. I
wasn't saying you were. I was just
no,
funny.
Jill.
No. The thing is that Garrison's laugh automatically makes what you said shady. That's it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, not even trying to troll. Like, this dude G got me insecure. They came through when we were at Southern for Against the Wall. I think we were all there, but Adrian at the time. And I think I was really drawn to the part towards the end, Garrison, when they were interviewing you, and they talked about how, the question that you had was, will we have left after having done that event? And for those who don't know, Against the Wall is, something that I was a part of helping to co-found, and a lot of us became involved in trying to bring the topic of racial reconciliation into the public more within the church. And so Southern partnered with us in doing that. We did one here at Andrews, and we partnered with some folks there to bring it to their campus. And there were a variety of things that happened that were positive, but then that were also very troubling. And so I think that led Garrison to sort of land by saying, I just wonder if if they'll end up in a worse place than they are now. And so I don't know if they are. Maybe there's opinions on that, but mixed with the combination of some other stuff that's happened in between then and now has caused an extreme amount of fatigue and an extreme amount of pessimism and frustration. We're obviously continuing to talk about it because we've chosen to step into the space, and so we really don't have a choice to opt out. It's either you're in or you're out. And there's no real neutral ground, which is another issue that we're seeing. So I don't know. I said a lot there. Thoughts about that? But your boy's tired. DN.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's only so much that people can take without getting some rest, and I think that's just an important thing to say for those who are listening who might be already kind of engaged in the conversation and kind of resonate with you, Nick's like, yeah, I'm really tired. I'm tired after one conversation. Like I get it, and that's super fair, and you should reach your rest. I think there needs to be voices who are committed to kind of being the troublers of Israel, within the denomination, within the church, not only within Adventism, but Christianity at large, in America, your region, your local, everywhere. You need people who are willing to say the uncomfortable thing. I think as it relates, I'm the Southern alum on the call here, so I'm gonna go ahead and just say
represent.
Represent SAU, baby. Actually, I'm wearing a Southern t-shirt.
Of course you are, bro. Of course.
But I got Loma Linda on the cap, so we balancing. Anyway, so I feel like, honestly, Southern's gonna do Southern. They have to assess their own situation, right? From the outside looking in, as just an alum speaking, I know the things that I experienced as a student. I know the things that I've seen happening there over time. I know some of the policies that are still on the books there that, don't get to shine out in the light and, don't get to go viral because of some, incident. But and I know that there are good faith actors on campus who are doing what they can to make a difference. So I want that to be acknowledged. Sure. I do think that it's really, really easy to get comfortable with aesthetic change when your institution needs fundamental foundational change, right? Like your structure is in trouble. You might not recognize it. You might think everything is okay and it might meet your needs today. But looking at what's going on there, it's unsustainable. And I say that in a broad sense, and I think it can apply in some ways to places like Southern, where they promised something. They promised to hire a chief diversity officer, and now more than 2 years later, they have not kept that promise. And for them, they say, hey, listen, we hired some people to advise on this topic. We hired some individuals for a couple years that we think can kind of fill out the role. We can fill the role and like the things that person would do, and they see that as enough. And again, that's for them to assess. I'm not going to say one way or the other. What I will say is like recognize that you made a promise which seemed like a full step, and what you've done is a half step. And that's for you to decide whether or not that's okay. But from the outside looking in, as a person who understands that there needs to be a full step, I'm going to call that out. And I mean, and that's just one instance, right? But like, I think that same kind of principle can be applied in so many of my relationships, where there is enough openness to talk about race. Is I think a lot of people feel comfortable kind of taking like these baby steps when actually we just need you to like lean all the way in. It's not enough for you to like be hype on like watching a movie, but like not be willing to be like criticized for some of the more firm positions. Like you can't just say like beyond like you can't watch a video on YouTube and like, okay, I get it, right? Or like a video, but you're not willing to take the full step or to be criticized when you make a misstep. It's one of the reasons why, I mean, Logan's not perfect, but as one of my white friends, you know, I can say like, I've seen a lot of growth in Logan. See, I'm not even trying to troll. I'm trying to honor my man in public. I'm trying to say, listen, I see
no doubt,
you know.
No,
and like the thing is, I can say like, yo, like Logan makes, you know, racial mistakes, right? Mistakes with regard to race issues, right? There are times, and in every single time, the reason why we can remain friends and remain brothers is because I feel like he's willing to receive that you know, critique, that, you know, like, yo, like this could change or that could change or this could be better, that could be better. And I think on the subject of race, it's people of color who should have kind of the authority to make those kinds of calls. But I think beyond race, like gender issues or any issue, you have to be open to hear from the very people who a lot of your decisions and your rhetoric or whatever it is affects, you know, those people who it affects. So I said a lot as well. But yeah, I think people just got to lean into it and like take full steps and then be willing to kind of be corrected along the way, have some type of accountability.
Yeah.
I just want to add real quick. Can we add racial mistakes to the Adventist Around the Horn dictionary / lexicon? Thank you.
Got it.
I'll help write that definition. I've made a few.
I got a question that I want to ask you guys. So I had the opportunity to preach at our campus ministries convention, and I definitely touched on the like frustration that I have sometimes experienced where institutionally leaders kind of let incidents slide, right? And I remember I had a conversation with a young man there, and he talked about how he has had moments where he has personally felt convicted about something on their campus or something societal at large, but he's surrounded by people that do not share that same conviction. And in some ways, he mentioned that he feels as though his courage is kind of lost in that encounter, because it's like, yo, I feel like I am like by myself in this like wilderness experience right now. I guess my question would be is in like, where do you gain that confidence in your conviction when you don't have a community there to share that conviction with?
Wow.
I just said a lot, so I'm gonna say Jordan. Somebody else gotta say Logan. Actually, I feel like Logan should speak on that because you are like,
Logan is in
Missouri,
fire, bro.
You're in Missouri, facts. Like you're with like a lot of white people who are not racially conscious.
It didn't hit me. I wasn't ready. I was
like, I am one of them.
he's like fooled you.
Nah, I guess while Logan's thinking, because I know he's got something. I'm gonna give him some time. I think that's a tough one. I think what what they probably need to understand is that if you're in a situation where you don't feel as if there's anybody else in the room who's tracking with your perspective or is standing in solidarity with you on it, then you can actually in some ways look at that as somewhat of an opportunity to set the climate on presenting that perspective. Because I think one of the things that can be challenging for the person you're describing is that they assume that they need to know the exact right thing to say because nobody else is saying it, you know? But actually, you know, if you have a conviction that's that deep on what it is you're convicted on, then, you know, you just have to let it out, you know, and obviously, you know, think it through, think through the right setting, maybe the right way to present it, the right content to give, maybe not giving it all at once, but looking for the different angles where you can maybe have them at least listen to a part of it, you know, initially, as opposed to, because if that person doesn't, then at a certain point, it's just going to explode out in a way that's not healthy, and that's going to invalidate, even in that moment, the very real things that that person is saying just because of how it's being said, you know? Yeah. So, you know, trust in the resources that, you know, they're leaning on to help shape their perspective, and trust that in the moment, you know, after thinking through what the key things are that you need to bring up, that you'll have the right words to say. And that's the best way to go about it, or that's maybe the best you can do.
I will say too, that reminds me a lot about what I learned a couple of years ago from Brene Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness, which is really good. And I would definitely recommend, if you're the one that's asking for this, you know, advice from us, or if it's a friend that you know that asked you this question that you presented to us, I'll recommend them or you to read this book, because one of the main points it says is that we have to find the belonging and worthiness in ourselves. So when we go out into the wilderness, and this wilderness being a place where our opinion doesn't belong, where our opinion is not the norm, where our opinion is seen as outcast, we can exist in that. We can bring that belonging with us. So wherever we go, we can belong anywhere, right? I think that's super important, especially for people like us that have conversations on race. And we exist in a system in the United States, in a world where what we think is just may not be seen as a norm, or may not be seen as, quote unquote, maybe the right way to do things, right? And clearly it is, especially in terms of race relations. So I would say definitely find honor and strength in being the only person with this voice. And like what Mike was saying, that actually gives you power to push the conversation where that individual thinks it should go. But I think, again, there's a lot of power in being able to say, you know, I can wear this badge of honor and being the first person to trailblaze this path. Yeah. The same way that Mike is the first person to do what he's doing at Andrews.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Go ahead, Logan. No, it's
you. No, you can. This is your topic. Go for it. I guess I'll speak.
Okay. All right. I'll say two things that kind of stand out to me. Like, the first thing is that, like, I recognize I've kind of been in a similar position as this person that you're describing, Adrian. And I think, like, one of the things is like, yo, like, do I have the words to get this out? Can I articulate this in a way that's like clear and convicting, and like I don't like it makes me upset or it makes me sad or whatever it is, and like maybe that emotion will come out, and maybe it'll kind of like, that's a fair thing to feel, and that's like a valid feeling. And I think, you know, going to Jordan's point, kind of having that internal dignity to say like, no, but this is something that needs to be said, and even if it's not said perfectly, it needs to be said regardless. But one way to kind of help you kind of get to a place where you might feel more confident is kind of consuming that, you know, book, like that information that kind of helps give you great language to use those things, you know? And so like one thing, like reading like on the topic, you know, whether it's Dyson or Kendi or D'Angelo or whoever it is, like those authors have given me great language to articulate some really tough things, like hard to really like pin down things. Like authors have given me language to kind of share that. And the second thing I'll say is like the group of friends, like the group chat that we have is so helpful and is so vital. Yeah. Like where I'm able to kind of like, we've all had some situation where we're like, yo, what do you think about this? And kind of having like that sounding board that of people who think differently than you, but have some fundamental things that we agree on that allow us to kind of like come together on some like, you know, like agreement, but having kind of that sounding board to say like, this is what I'm thinking, or this is what I'm going through. How do you, you know, think I should like work through this? It's important. And I recognize that that's kind of a privilege. But I think anyone on this thing would be willing to be a sounding board to someone. I know I would. I know I've witnessed it with others on the call. Like we're willing to kind of listen and to reflect and to say, hey, this is what I would do in a situation. Or this is what I think about this thing, and kind of just encourage you in that fight, in that push. So
we'll give Logan the last word on race.
No.
Oh, the white man, huh?
Logan, you have the privilege to end this conversation.
Oh, gosh.
We got to do it.
I mean, I think anytime you kind of push into a conversation, and Garrison kind of touched on it on, you know, many of the issues, whether it's race or gender, I think it becomes really challenging because you can feel alone. I mean, I live in mid-Missouri. It's not like I've transformed my community I actually ended up just, you know, kind of switching to worship other places because it was like challenging to like to feel that people weren't quite listening. But the reality is you've got to pick your battles. And when you're talking about picking a battle, someone's going to push back. Like that's just how fighting works. And I think that's like the biggest thing that people have to realize is that I think a lot of times people are like, let me go into this and I'll tell them the truth about this and they're going to hear it. And it's like, they're probably not going to hear it. They're probably going to fight back. And if you're prepared like Garrison, I think that was the point I was going to push into, being able to throw it off. I remember when I was first starting to kind of be vocal about these conversations, I would DM my friends that I didn't even talk to a ton, just be like, hey, I want to hear your perspective on this. And I remember a couple times I was about to put out some content and people were like, don't do this. And I was like, but I thought it was good. And other people I had a couple people that were in the minority conversations and were like, nah, this is cool, do it. And a few other people were like, absolutely terrible idea. And so like being able to actually hear the people and like listen to them tell you like, hey, this might not be great. Even though this person told you it was a good idea, they may not understand that and be willing to kind of take that. And you may put a ton of work into like an email or a conversation, and then someone tell you don't do it. You just have to listen. You just have to be willing to say like, you know what, you're right. But then also I think for me it's just looking for the person that I know might be willing to hear that conversation. It may not be the person that was speaking, or it may not be the president or whatever, but there's a person that you've seen has an understanding of some of these things, whether it's a different form of social change or justice. And you can say, you know what, that's the person I need to get on my side now in this conversation so I can move forward. Because people have probably over the years talked to the person that's been the problem or the group that's been the problem.
Oh, that Missouri internet starting.
Yeah, facts.
That middle America internet starting to act up.
Them clout pods ain't hold out. You know what I mean?
Nah, they said, white guy, you've been talking too much about race.
The internet said, nope.
It's all right.
Not today. Nah, I don't know where I cut, but I think I got my gist out there.
No, that was good. We appreciate it. We appreciate it for sure. Well, I think we're approaching like almost an hour and a half. So I don't know if we plan to do all that. But thank you all for joining us. A lot in the comments for sure. We'll try to do better next time. Engage in those. I was trying to multitask, but it's a lot going on my screen right now.
I see they're way behind us too.
Yeah, there's a little lag as well. But thank you all for tuning in. We'll do better on that next time. We'll maybe give some advance warning when we're going to do it again. We literally just hit live and, you know, y'all joined us, so we appreciate it. Topics for next time, we're going to talk about, is Logan problematic on Twitter? Yes. Or C?
The short answer
yes
is yes.
or C.
Hey, never lost out.
Well, with caution. But no, we definitely appreciate y'all tuning in, and we gonna sign off. All right, y'all have a good one. Stay safe.
I'm out now.
You know, do all that good stuff.
Peace.
And we'll holler at you. Peace.